Hello friends, thank you for joining me today. So I am very excited because as you can see my background is different. My library room is finally set up, or at least the bookshelves are all set up, all stocked. All of my books are now out of boxes and on shelves and I love it so much. It just brings me great joy to just stand here and look at five bookshelves worth of books. So I won't dwell too much on it. I do plan to do a little mini library tour in a separate video, but I just wanted to address it because I'm just super excited and I love how it looks. So hope you enjoyed the new background, and let's go ahead and get into the books that I read in November. Okay, so the first book that I read was The Last Sun by K.D. Edwards, which is the first book in the Tarot Sequence series. And I planned on reading this at the same time as a couple friends as a buddy read, but there were some issues with ordering it through Barnes & Noble, and by the time I got it, they had already finished it. But anyway, so in this book, you're following a guy named Rune St. John, who is the last survivor of the Sun Court. So this is a contemporary fantasy that takes place in our world, but there are beings called Atlanteans who hail from Atlantis who have powers, and the hierarchy of their society is based around the major arcana of the tarot divination system. So basically, if you don't know the major arcana, those are the kind of the named cards that you're probably familiar with, like the sun, the moon, the magician, things like that. And Rune, along with his, along with his companion slash bodyguard named Brand, are hired to find Lady Judgment's missing son, whose name is Adam. And during this investigation, this legendary creature seems to be on their trail, and they're basically trying to figure out who is behind the kidnapping and how it might be connected to the massacre of the Sun Court. So unfortunately, as much as I wanted to love this, it was kind of a flop for me. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. So firstly, well, the magic of the people in each court is influenced by their respective tarot card, but it's not really a tarot-based magic system, which is kind of a bummer. But like that aside, one of the main things that made this not for me is the lack of characterization, in my opinion. I will choose more action over more character development almost every time in a novel, but in this case, I felt like the main characters were so bland and two-dimensional. Honestly, Rune has no interesting or definable characteristics aside from being the main character. He has just very common main character traits that you think of with a good guy main character. He has some horrible trauma in his past for sure, but trauma is not a personality trait. And I think that most people would agree that a person is more than just their trauma, but there's really not much more to Rune. At least in this book. This is the first in a series. And Brand is the rough, gruff, but actually cares once you get to know him kind of character, which is fine. That's a character type. It's more than what I can say about Rune. He has more personality than Rune. But, and I shit you not, I have never in my whole life read a character who says the F word so much than with Brand. It was almost every time he opened his mouth. I'm not even joking. And the world building, which I really enjoy in books, world building is important to me. It felt very cobbled together with all of these just random creatures that felt out of place to me, even for the island of New Atlantis, which is where the Atlanteans now live because their home was destroyed in a war between humans and Atlanteans a long time ago. I did like the magic system. It uses objects called sigils to store spells and magic. And Rune has a really cool shifting saber sword thing. There's a romance that was kind of refreshing because one person of the two is very openly expressing interest in the other, rather than it being, you know, that kind of confusing game of not knowing what the other person is thinking and feeling. The one person in particular is just very, very clearly interested in the other person. And this book was also very gay, which was great. Everyone is handsome and gay, so that might be a major draw for you. But overall, it just wasn't for me. I liked the premise, and there were some really cool action and fighting scenes, but there was just a lot missing from this, or just too many random things added for me to love it. I won't be continuing the series. I think that both of my friends really liked it though, and that's awesome. So, I mean, it just proves that people have differing tastes, and I'm glad that they enjoyed it, but I did not really. I really had to push myself through to finish it, and again, I won't be continuing the series. And then I read Violet Made of Thorns by Gina Chen. This is a YA fantasy about a girl named Violet who is a seer, who is someone who can see the threads of fate and see things like in the past and the future. And she was pulled out of poverty as a child because of her ability and works for the king, basically helping him in his rule by kind of tweaking her visions to suit what he wants people to think and believe. And there's a prophecy that says that the prince named Cyrus must marry his true love, or bad things will happen. But Violet also gets this other prophecy that says that the prince must die before summer's end, or she will burn. There's a lot of courtly intrigue in this book, lots of lies and secrets, and a very thorny path to navigate between Violet and Cyrus and their very strained relationship. I was shocked by how much I enjoyed this. I give it 5 out of 5 stars. This is now the third Owl Crate book that I've given 5 stars. They're on a roll, I guess. I really liked Violet's morally gray sensibilities. I was a big fan of her hate-lust relationship with Cyrus. Honestly, like, the hate is always there, even in the moments where they're attracted to each other, which was really entertaining. And I liked that there were never tender or sweet moments between them. It was all intense and layered and vicious. So I think I can say that I do enjoy romance in books that are of that type. Like in real life, like, no way. Like in real life, that would be such a turn off for two people like who hate each other, like not in real life, but in books, I'm finding that I really enjoy it. I will link my recent review of Together We Burn by Isabel Ibanez, which has a similar kind of fiery relationship, and I really liked that as well. So there isn't a magic system per se, but obviously being able to see the threads of fate is an element of magic, and there are also fairies that come from this place called the Fairywood, and they're small, flying, winged, glowing creatures who are typically employed by rich people in this world to glamour their appearance, basically. And I enjoyed their role in the story. They do play an important role. And this didn't have like a lot of high octane action at all. It's mainly courtly intrigue and trying to zero in on these prophecies and figuring out exactly what they mean, how they might be able to subvert them. It's about secrets and agendas and surviving in a hostile hierarchy. And I just really liked this. It's the first in what I believe is going to be a duology. This only just came out this year, but I definitely want to read the next book when it comes out. Really liked this, and I'm very happy and kind of excited that it's sort of prompting me to reframe my attitude towards romance in books. I think it's just a matter of, finding what it is I like exactly, and I really like the fiery, conflicting relationship romance, I guess. And also, the cover of this is stunning. I think it's gorgeous, and look at these end papers. Oh my gosh. And even just the bare naked cover is really pretty. And here, since I'm here, the artwork on the inside cover of this is also gorgeous. So that shows Violet and Cyrus in sort of this garden hedge maze thing. I just love the Owl Crate edition. I love everything about it. This was a great book. And the last book I managed to finish was the audiobook for Red Sister by Mark Lawrence and narrated by Heather O'Neill. So this is the first book in the Book of the Ancestor trilogy, and it's a fantasy following a young girl named Nona Gray. She was slated to be hanged because she is accused of murder, but she's saved and taken in by the nuns of the Convent of Sweet Mercy, which is a church that trains girls to be killers. So you're following Nona as she learns all of these assassin skills, and she's driven by revenge, and there are some mysteries as to who Nona is and why some people are after her, and some other things going on at the same time. It reminded me a little bit of Nevernight by Jay Kristoff, because I actually just recently finished the second book in the Nevernight Chronicle, which is God's Grave, and it was excellent. But it just kind of reminds me there's similarities with the assassin school thing, and they're both in it for revenge, both very strong female characters. So yeah, there's kind of a similarity there. If you've read one, then you might enjoy the other. They're not exactly the same, but I don't know, it kind of they both reminded me of each other. And I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. This was a very solid, really good adult fantasy. I think that the fall was a perfect time of year to read this. Like, it had an oddly cozy feel about it. I don't know how to explain it exactly. Like, maybe part of it is because it's basically a school setting, an assassin school setting. But yeah, I don't know what it was, but it just felt very cozy, very classic, and I really enjoyed it. And when I say that Nona is a young girl, she's young. She's 8 years old when she arrives at the convent. So these kids are kids. Like what Harry Potter was 11 when he went to Hogwarts, and these kids are significantly younger. And Red Sister is much more violent and bloody than Harry Potter. So I don't know, if violence against kids, with kids, bothers you, steer clear of this book. I liked Nona and the exploration of her abilities and just seeing how she's developing her worldview as such a young person. It did feel a little odd when I would remember just how young the kids actually are, but you know, it's one of those suspend disbelief kind of things. There is a time skip of like a couple years, maybe a few years, but they're still kids, like not even teenagers, I don't think. And sometimes, you know, it was weird remembering that they're that young with all of the deadly things that they get up to. But the world building has been great in this first book, and there's definitely more that I hope is expanded on in the last 2 books. This is a trilogy, I believe. There were these 4 ancient clans whose descendants have innate talents, like having supernatural speed or immense strength. There's this like strange phenomenon with the moon and the sun that creates this like hot beam of light that they call the focus that moves around the planet. Like, I'm not really sure exactly what's going on there, but it sounds cool, some really interesting world building. There's a sort of spiritual power called the Path that can be harnessed in battle. You know, just lots of cool world building that I hope to read more about. There were moments that felt slow in the middle, but for the most part it was all entertaining, watching Nona learn and discover things. And like, she's just such a little badass. Like, she just kicks ass. I can't wait to see what she gets up to when she is older, and I do want to continue the series. And Heather O'Neill, I mean, her last name definitely sounds Irish or something, because she has a slight accent, and it was very pleasant to listen to. I'm just saying, I listened to the audiobook and she just had a very pleasant voice. So those are the books that I read in November. Not as much as I usually do. It was kind of a crazy month in my personal life and just more moving into the house. We're very slow unpackers. Most of our stuff is set up now. There are still some boxes in the garage, but it was just a lot of unpacking and getting settled and just kind of a lot of drama and stuff going on in life. So I'm very happy about my library. I love it, and I will be doing again a tour, maybe in a vlog, or I might just make a whole separate video, short little video going through my bookshelves. But anyways, thank you guys so much for joining, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye!